All right, hello and welcome to the video. And once again, my name is Wade Smith. This video is about the real worst case scenario hurricane for New Orleans and based on theoretical maximums and also observed twice now maximum hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico and the Florida Straits. Actually, three times, correction. Uh, for some reason, everybody thinks Katrina was the worst case scenario for New Orleans. First of all, let's clear up some things. Katrina died down from 175 miles per hour sustained all the way down to 125 miles per hour sustained before it made its Louisiana landfall. And also, Katrina actually missed New Orleans. The weak side of the hurricane even missed New Orleans, much less the strong side missed New Orleans. New Orleans never got 100-mile-an-hour wind in the city. Um, let's debunk the myth that the levees were blown up by the Army Corps of Engineers. I don't know who started that myth, but they absolutely were not. The storm surge of Katrina was 28 feet, which is actually higher than the levees, especially at Waveland, Mississippi. It was 28 feet, and they have proof of that. And that was actually higher than the levees. So the levees were going to be overtopped even if they did not fail. But they failed before the storm surge got that high in New Orleans, and it flooded the city with about 8 to 10 feet of water in the lower Ninth Ward and other districts. All right. But the myth is that the Army Corps of Engineers blew the levees to release the pressure, which is an outright lie. The original levee was never designed to withstand Hurricane Katrina, much less the real worst case scenario. All right. So, what is the real worst case scenario for New Orleans? In a typical year, the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America, whatever we're calling it these days, can produce a 195 mile per hour sustained hurricane with a peak 3-second gust of 255 miles per hour. The only reason they don't get that strong is because wind shear and dry air and dust are usually common enough to keep them from getting that strong. All right. Now, and it would be as big or bigger than Katrina. Katrina was a large but not largest possible hurricane in area. It's not even the largest one ever in the Atlantic basin, much less if you look at the global records of storms like Haiyan or Super Typhoon Tip. Katrina was actually a small hurricane compared to those storms. Now, it's big compared to most hurricanes that hit in Louisiana and Florida and whatnot, but compared to the biggest storms in world history, Katrina is actually a very small hurricane. Um, so what is the real worst case scenario? A hurricane at least as big as Katrina in size or area, but with actually making landfall at theoretical max intensity of 195 miles per hour sustained is the real worst case scenario. And we're talking about complete annihilation of New Orleans. It would blow out the windows of all the high rise buildings and gut all the high rise buildings, and it would blow almost every house in the city off its foundation in the city and suburbs, and it would actually produce a storm surge close to 40 feet or so, depending on the exact angle of approach and exact landfall location. 40 feet, whereas Katrina was 28 feet. Also, the real worst case scenario, this is obviously going to flood out Waveland, Mississippi, Biloxi, Mississippi, Gulfport Bay, St. Louis, and Mobile Bay if a hurricane this big and powerful ever actually happens. And I'm not saying this to predict that it's going to happen in this year or some other year. It might not happen for 400 more years, but statistically, it will eventually happen one day. Um, but that is the real worst case scenario. The real worst case scenario for New York City is a Category 5, 160 mile per hour hurricane for New York City and Long Island. Now that global warming has raised the temperature by nearly 2 degrees Fahrenheit since the last time New York got hit by a Category 4, which was actually 400 years ago. All right. But it's now possible for 160 mile per hour sustained with 200 to 210 mile per hour gusts hurricane to hit New York City and Long Island. It doesn't happen usually because the troughs always line up so that they kick the hurricanes out to sea and shear the hurricanes and weaken them. but every once in a long while, something like the Long Island Express or the 1600 Hog Island hurricane can get ahead of the trough and make landfall there and unleash holy hell. All right. The real worst case scenario for the Bahamas and the Florida Keys, according to Dr. Kerry Emanuel, who is one of the leading experts, one of the three leading experts in hurricane science, he said that the theoretical maximum there is 215 miles per hour sustained with about a 285 mile per hour 3-second gust. And again, you're looking at a 40 plus foot storm surge for the Bahamas or Miami or the Florida Keys if a storm that strong ever actually landfalls somewhere up in there. The last time we got even close to that was the Labor Day 1935 hurricane, which we still don't even fully understand the Labor Day 1935 hurricane because some of the physics that the eyewitnesses described, I don't know how to explain in present physics models and meteorology models. That what the survivors described, that the wind sandblasted and degloved the faces and hands of human beings and left nothing but skeletons behind in some cases. And that was supposedly a 185 mile per hour sustained hurricane, not even a theoretical maximum hurricane. Um So we don't know how to fully describe what happened during a Labor Day hurricane yet. We don't have a model in physics and meteorology that explains that correctly just yet. And we might never have it. Who knows? Um Melissa that hit last year in Jamaica was close to a theoretical maximum hurricane. And it's the most destructive thing on record for that island nation now. They thought Gilbert was bad, and Melissa made Gilbert look like a joke. And Melissa also has the official highest recorded wind gust, 10-second wind gust ever recorded by a drop sonde in any basin at 252 miles per hour, 10-second gust, at only 600 and some odd feet above sea level. So that's close to land level. And when you're dealing with hills and mountains, that's the wind that they're actually going to experience at landfall. So you're looking at EF5 tornado force winds, almost old F5 tornado force winds in a hurricane, and it flattened everything where it hit. And then the rainfall in the mountains was so bad that it flooded everything on both the windward side and the leeward side of the islands was flooded. So even places that were sheltered from the wind, such as the leeward side of the mountains, were absolutely flooded out by the rainfall. All right. And again, this is not to irrationally scare people. It's just that I get sick of the professional meteorologists never actually warning anybody in New Orleans of what the real worst case scenario there is. Because if this happens in our lifetime, statistically, if you go out long enough in the future, probabilistic models would suggest that it will eventually happen someday, whether it's right now or whether it's 400 or 500 years from now or 1,000 years from now or somewhere in between. But probabilistically, the real worst case scenario will eventually happen there one day. And you may as well assume that because especially in recent years that most of them rapidly intensify right through landfall, you may as well assume that any hurricane, even a category 1, could make landfall as the real worst case scenario simply because we've discovered that they can rapidly intensify from category 1 to category 5 in a single day. So it's not like it used to be 30 or 40 years ago where the thinking was, well, there's cold water offshore of Louisiana, which there was back then, and we don't have to worry about the hurricane because it's going to weaken or it's not going to intensify. That no longer holds true because the Gulf of America is so hot now in hurricane season that the hurricanes just intensify right through landfall unless they hit an atmospheric barrier such as wind shear or dry air. That's the only thing that stops them from just plowing New Orleans every year. All right. So again, this is not to irrationally scare people, but rather to prepare people that the real worst case scenario is almost unimaginable in any American city, but especially places like Miami, Tampa Bay, and New Orleans, and even New York. If the real worst case scenario actually hit New York, I don't even know how we would calculate the monetary damage and the human casualties, because there would be no way to evacuate people. Because the thing is, in order to actually get into New York, it has to be moving about 25 to 35 miles per hour forward movement speed. So it would come in within a day or two notice, and you would have no idea that it was going to stay that strong when it actually happens. But there would fail to be any wind shear there, and it would come in at just the right angle on perhaps a cutoff low boundary and hook west a lot like Storm Sandy, except it would be moving faster and the wind speed would be almost twice as fast as Superstorm Sandy. So that's the real worst case scenario for New York. So again, not to irrationally terrify people, but to prepare people that it's coming. We've almost never seen a real worst case scenario in the United States other than a Labor Day 1935, and even that was not quite the real worst case scenario. So get ready and prepare as if every hurricane is the worst one ever, because you never know if it's going to go through that rapid intensification right at the last second. We don't even know how to forecast that. They can put a probability on it, but they have no idea how to causally forecast rapid intensification. We have no idea what causes it. All right. Thank you very much.